Thank you so much, Lindsay. That was beautiful. And before I talk, I want to add one more announcement. We're going into the pledge drive, and our theme is We Are SBCSL, or I Am SBCSL. So we want all of you to take a video of yourself saying, "Hi, my name is Michael, and I am SBCSL," and you can substitute your name in there. And just text that video to Reverend Nicole and myself, and we will do our magic and compile them, and you'll see them in the month of October. So welcome to the second Sunday. Our theme is Cosmic Connection, and we're going to talk today about being inextricably connected. And what better way than to start with a quote of someone that we like a lot around here, Brene Brown. And we'll wait for John to pull that up. And she says this: spirituality is recognizing and celebrating that we are all inextricably connected to each other by a power greater than all of us. And that our connection to that power and to one another is grounded in love and in compassion. And I want to talk about this connection in many, many different ways. I want to talk about first from the scientific point of view on how we're connected, and how the connection is not just happenstance that sometimes happens, sometimes doesn't. Because really, it goes beyond the dependency on time and space and even science as we know it today. And so let me set the stage. So in the 1600s, we had something happen in this country and all over the world called the Renaissance. And what the Renaissance was all about was the scientists using their scientific method to basically wrestle the ability to describe the unknown or the mystery to everyone from the theologians. And they had a good run. They had a good run of like 300 years. And they were doing good. They used their scientific method. They defined things further and further, put up postulates and laws, and it was working really, really good for them, and they created a lot of good stuff for us. But then the year 1900 came along. A physicist by the name of Max Planck did an experiment, and Max Planck discovered the quantum. And from that point forward, quantum physics was on the scene. That made these scientists just sort of scratch their head, because what they found when they looked harder and harder, all these rules and postulates, they could subdivide everything and get to elementary particles. They started seeing when they looked at them, these particles weren't real. They were popping in and out of existence. They were in potentiality. Sometimes they'd appear, sometimes they wouldn't, and you had to look at them for them to appear. So the scientists really didn't know what to make of this. So they had just had to admit that they can't explain it when it gets down to that level. But they went on and they were trying to figure things out, and I want to share two experiments with you. The first experiment was done in Mexico City. And it was done to understand that when people are correlated, like they can sort of, like we would think, read each other's thoughts, are they just good at, is it thoughts being transmitted and they're just good receivers? Well, this experimenter put a correlated set of people that meditated together and could correlate what one was thinking with the other in two separate rooms. And the rooms were special rooms. The rooms were rooms that had this material that prevented any electromagnetic wave that we know of from passing through. And sure enough, they shined a light on the one meditator. He hit his button, and almost instantaneously, the other meditator hit his button. So what the experimenter was wanting, he got his correlation of, that it wasn't a thought wave that he was reading. There was a connection. And that connection is important because that's what we talk about here in our philosophy. We talk about spirit, God, or whatever you want to call it, going from that which is not physical and creating things in the physical world. The second experiment was a more technical experiment. A French physician named Alain Aspect in the 70s they were discussing this concept of non-locality. Can things have interaction and knowledge of each other if it's done in such a way that there's no transmission? So what Elaine did was he charged a couple of protons where they were correlated. And he had them in this big experimental device. And then he changed the polarity on one. And with a certain type of glasses or instrument, you could see that change in polarity. And immediately the other one changed. But what he did, he was a very good experimenter. He proved that if there was some type of energy wave that passed them, it had to be going faster than the speed of light. Well, the speed of light was very important in physics because Albert Einstein wrote his relativity around it. That's where we put people to the moon. That's what all our science is based on. So once again, the scientists just had to accept there was something that they could not explain with the old science. So once again, this says that this correlation and that consciousness is not dependent on waves to be transmitted to it. So it's a powerful thing for us to understand because we're getting, instead of science going against religion, it's supporting the concept of spirit creating things out of nothingness. But where I want to go with this, I want to go with three aspects of this. That first one is God is where we are, no matter what we are. If we're having the worst day in our life, God and Spirit is there. If we're having the best day of our life, God and Spirit is there. And I want to start with a quote by Ernest Holmes. Let me get it up. It goes like this. He says, divine intelligence continues to flow. We are in an infinite mind, and infinite mind is also in us. It is by this mind that we think. The mind is eternal, therefore we are eternal. This mind is complete, therefore we are spiritually complete, though we do not appear to be so. And so let me explain the last part of that, the way I understand it, because what we do is we have this essence of the divine within us at all times. We don't have to earn it. It's always been there, always will be. We can always use that. But Ernest Holmes also tells us that God is always God, and we are always a choice. And why it doesn't appear to be so is we're looking at the outside world or looking at some, quote, wisdom that some peer told us or some parent told us that negates that says you'll never get ahead or this can't be, you haven't done the work, it needs to get there. And when we believe that, we've made our choice. But the choice we've made is just limited. So, but God or Spirit or that essence of the divine is always with us all the time. So if that's true, if we do know our spiritual identity, which is just that, we know we are never alone. And what we're never alone with, I have a second Ernest Holmes quote I want to read. And it is up there already. It says, no man ever walks life's road alone. There is ever another who walks with him. This is his inner self, the undying reality, which his personality but poorly emulates. Let us learn to be still and let the truth speak through us. To be still and know that our inner light shines. So we have this inner light inside of us, and when we choose to use it, we can choose to manifest our outward world to look like that inner light. And we're all different. We're all unique. And we're all these unique aspects of the divine that's operating through our personality. And it's really a good thing. And to have oneness and to have wholeness, we have to accept and nurture everyone doing the same thing. So we have to stay open and in this connection. Ernest Holmes says there's power for good in the universe, and we can make use of it. Now, I can make use of it, and you can make use of it, but it's not just limited to us. It's not. Everyone in the world has that same power. We're not these special entities that have this special way that we can use it and no one else can use it. And we have to bring the compassion in. To be open to connection, we have to have compassion. And no better example of that than Mother Teresa. So Mother Teresa says, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. And there's a very poignant story from Mother Teresa. She was in her place where they helped the poor. And she got this call from this Hindu mother that had a lot of kids, and there was no father around, and they were starving to death. And so Mother Teresa and some of her workers went over there, and they brought a bag of rice with them. And so they gave the mother the bag of rice, and then they went to attend to the children. And they came back, and the Hindu mother was still there, and half the bag of rice was gone. Mother Teresa says, what happened to the half bag of rice? And the Hindu mother said, I gave it to my neighbor. Her kids were starving too. And her neighbor was a Muslim family. And so Hindus and Muslims have had some issues in India. But what overcame that was that compassion that there was from one mother to another that gave them what they needed, gave them that substance. And for me, the Divine Feminine is always about giving substance and taking care of people and nurturing people. And that's why we're all in this experience together. I have a great image and a quote from Alan Watts. Alan Watts is a Buddhist writer. And that shows the tree where we all are coming from. You notice it's one tree, not multiple trees. And it says every individual is a unique manifestation of the whole, as every branch is a particular outreaching of the tree. So that's the concept of oneness and wholeness. All those shining lights are the individual aspects of us that are using the universal spirit. And it's shining in our own way. And so when we look at that and know that, we can stop seeing the otherness in other people and start seeing the oneness in other people. And we were talking in a men's group this last Wednesday, and we had a discussion. We said, well, what when COVID is over, how would we like things to be? How would we like things changed? And I listened to one of my favorite ministers in the movement, Dr. Roger Teal, who was the senior minister for Mile High Church, one of our largest churches in the movement for 30 years. He just retired. And he brought a very special, he went back deep and brought in two spiritual giants. And I just want to share with you what those people had to say and what that message can mean to us. And the subject was one river, many wells. And Meister Eckhart, a 13th century Christian mystic, told us this. He says, God is a great underground river, and no one can dam up, and no one can stop it. And then, more current time, a man by the name of Matthew Fox, who was an excommunicated Catholic priest who wrote a great book called Creation Spirituality. He says, yeah, there's one underground river with the essence and the pure and the joy and the wisdom of spirit in it, but there's many wells. There's a Taoist well, there's a Buddhist well, there's a Catholic well, there's a Centers for Spiritual Living well, I'm sure. And what he's saying is that we have this essence of spirit, and that's where the faith traditions came about. We try to understand that essence of spirit, and then we put some structure around it for us to understand. That's the well. And understand that there's structure and there's dogma, and that's why Ernest Holmes knew this in the 20s. When he first started, in the 1920s, when he first started putting this spiritual philosophy together for us. That's why he so always talks about this golden thread that runs its way through all the different traditions. But that golden thread came to the traditions. The traditions didn't create it. It came to it. The water is what the golden thread is. And these wells, just like anything we build, are temporary. They rust. They deteriorate. The pump goes out. But the water, the pure bliss, the love, the joy, and the wisdom, the spirit, it never changes. It never gets destroyed. It just gets recycled and is there for us over and over again. And so earlier on, Dr. Till shares a story about when the International New Thought Alliance were meeting. They had this Trappist monk called Wayne Teasdale. John, can you bring that one up for me? Who had a great message for them that sort of explains this river and this well theory. He says, humanity stands across a road between horror and hope. We must seed a new consciousness, a radically fresh approach to life, drawing its inspiration from the perennial spirituality and moral insights, intuition, and experience. We call this new awareness not the homogenization of religion, but the recovering of the shared mystic heart beating in the center of the world's deepest spiritual traditions. So, in a way, for us to really understand oneness from a new perspective, we have to learn a new language. We have to learn the language of viewing life as a mystic. And all viewing life as a mystic means is viewing life looking at God and looking at all the different aspects of God. And not looking at the otherness of the different faith traditions, but looking at the beauty and the purity and seeing that aspect of God wherever you go. So that's the new language for us to learn. And Ernest Holmes sort of confirmed that, and he called it something else, but John, could you put that up for me? He says, the person who goes deeply into his or her nature will find that God speaks in a language more subtle than the human language. This language is the universal language of spiritual emotion. So we're talking with a language that's not fixed on the dogma of any faith or anything like that. We're talking about the language of truth, of love, of joy, of wisdom. We're talking about the language that the water carries, not the structure that the well puts to it. Because the structure that the well puts to it is just to make use of the beautiful essence of the water. And we're in an interesting time. And that's why if we can develop this language of the mystic and use our imagination and bring this essence of the water that's not focused on otherness, it's focused on oneness, we can make our life greater and the life of others around us so much greater. Because this I know, we're going through a COVID pandemic, and it's a pandemic from a biological point of view, probably an economical point of view. But for some of us, we're going through a pandemic, we're letting it get to us. And we're having a stressful experience because of the pandemic. And so the one thing I know about all things, both spiritually and in the real world, is right before a great thing is birthed, there's a lot of stress going on. And it's almost like getting ready for a hurricane. And I've been in 9 hurricanes, I think, in my life. And I remember what one looked like because the eye of the hurricane passed directly over me. So 2 hours before, the trees were all leaning that way. It's called a 180-degree wind shift. And then the eye was over me, and it was calm as could be. And 2 hours later, the trees were all going the other way. And both those times were fierce times. And then down south, we have a saying, you go and meet your friends before the hurricane. And as you leave, you shake their hand or give them a hug and say, we'll see you on the other side. Now, that doesn't mean we'll see you on the other side of life experience after you have a transition or anything like that. It means that your friend's going to be safe, and you're going to come out and tell you jokes and laugh and eat together just like you did before. And so that's what I'm suggesting to us, is if we can pick up this new language of learning to drink from that water that's pure, that's love, that's joy, and learn to see that as the stuff that binds us together, rather than seeing the otherness that we have in our spiritual traditions, in our political traditions, in our country traditions, in our county traditions, in the friends that we hang out with. We hang out with people because they're sort of like us. But if we can learn this language of the mystic, and we can use our powerful imagination to take that pure essence of spirit and just recreate our life with it, and recreate the life around everyone else with it, we can be in a very, very powerful place to be. And I think that's where our men's group was really wanting to go the other night. So anyway, I encourage you to pick up that second language, understand that God is with you no matter where you are, understand that you're never alone, and understand that we have to stay open to connection. Thank you, and God bless you.